No slave master can rest easy, because the slave now is becoming a problem in America. No jobs, no money. So you deal drugs to him, you deal guns to him. So he's a killer already, but he's insane in his killing. So Django Unchained might give direction to the bullets. Remember our mayor, he didn't tell them to stop shooting. He told them shoot straight, because you're killing innocent children. And the alderman that I sat with said, as long as our murder and drugs and gang violence was contained and did not ill affect the broader community, they didn't really care if it went on. Well, after 9/11, America needs something else now, because the guns of the militia may be directed at the government, but they're afraid of the rise of black men and women. So to me, when I saw the movie and came out, Sister Karima said a white lady came out in front of me with her husband, and she said to him, I won't be able to eat tonight. See? Now multiply that by the tens of thousands and the millions that will see the movie that are white, and multiply that by the tens of thousands of blacks that will see the movie, and be encouraged to do what? Then the guns, 350 million of them, turn. Seemed to me that the message in that movie was to stir white people to the nature of murder, and stir black people to be unchained, awake, and deadly. It's a prescription, in my judgment, for race war. And if that is what is being planned by those who guide sheep-like people, I want to warn you, you're really planning the death of America as a nation under the wrath of God, for the black man is no longer forsaken. I took time to answer that question because it was loaded with so much. I'll try to be shorter in some of my next responses.
Brother Minister, please, we really want you to continue to give such great analysis, insight that you are doing. I wanted to continue in a different way, but kind of on the same thing. You mentioned guns, which of course is related to violence. We are seeing now the fratricidal violence in the black community. We are seeing instances, for example, in the killing of Trayvon Martin, Chavis Carter handcuffed in a police car, that many feel was the targeting of black males. Then you have the 20 children shot to death in Newtown, Connecticut, and 6 adults killed as well. These incidents of violence, are they different? Are they related? What do you see happening?
I see the society spinning out of control. You look in Greece, austerity measures, violence. You look in Spain, violence. You look in Italy, violence. You look in France and in the United Kingdom, violence. As the economy of the Western world begins to implode and collapse, and people that have been used to getting the finer things in life cannot get them anymore, then you will find people becoming more and more angry with their governments, more and more desperate, and then you'll find the tendency toward revolt, revolution, anarchy. So that's what I see happening. But what we just witnessed last night, what was going on in the U.S. Senate, and what was going on and will be going on in the House of Representatives, giving us a 2-month breather to continue madness. Those innocent children that were shot down in Newtown, the murderers of the children are in Congress right now. Why do I say murderers of a new generation of babies? Because if America and the leaders are too weak and cowardly to do what is necessary, then kicking the can down the road is sentencing babies in the future to the same violent death that we saw in Newtown. Either the president and the Congress must take on what is necessary to solve the problem. And the number one word is not just cutting the debt or cutting spending, raising taxes. The number one thing is, what are the American people ready to sacrifice in order to free future generations of what is going on now and will get worse in 2013? A culture of violence that will explode more in 2013 than in 2012, we're sorry to say.
Brother Minister, thank you. I would like to come back to a political question a little later, but at this point I'd like to go to Brother Shad Muhammad, our assistant editor, and have him put some questions to you.
Thank you, Brother Richard. Brother Minister, over the past year and a half, you've been particularly effective interacting with the youth via social networking, answering hundreds of questions submitted via your popular Twitter feed, and you've also spoken on numerous college campuses across the United States. Do you plan to continue and expand that outreach in the upcoming year? And secondly, what are the keys to survival for our young college students and the struggling historically black colleges and universities?
I definitely plan, as long as God gives me life, to continue to speak to our young people in the colleges, the universities, and in the streets. And I want to continue, or we want to continue to encourage leaders and pastors that the church, the mosque, the synagogue is where those who believe they're saved are. The unsaved are in the streets. So our work is not in the mosque, it's not in the synagogue, it's not in the church, it's in the streets where the problems are. Now, the historically black colleges are suffering. They were the bedrock of the production of strong leadership in the 60s for the civil rights movement. Many of those who were the spark plugs of what happened in the 60s, their brilliance is in academia now. So the poetry of Hakeem Adabuti, the poetry of my sister that's in Virginia Tech, Nikki Giovanni, the poetry of Sonia Sanchez. These are gifted, scholarly lovers of our people. They're doing a great job where they are because they're teaching young people, and the young people that they're teaching hopefully will be better than the elders that are running things today. But to take our brilliant people from movement and stop movement toward liberation, so much so that the colleges now are being taken over. They're being merged because they don't want to see an all-black institution anymore, because they don't want coming out of a black institution what they saw come out in the 60s. So what is the future of these black colleges and universities? Respectfully, we must be training young people not to look for a job, but to take those disciplines that will encourage their creative minds to come out and create a job. Steve Jobs, Gates, Zuckerberg, they didn't graduate from college. They went to college, but their creative minds caused them to do something that not only gave people jobs, but created now the means by which the masses of the planet are quickly awakening, escaping the controlled media by the elite and oligarchs of the world. So the black colleges and universities must realize that we are in a time period where we must prepare ourselves to do something for ourselves and prepare ourselves to build a nation and a world that suffices our needs. So little subject matter that gives you a degree that means nothing is unacceptable. We must challenge ourselves in these colleges and not let the so-called advisors who are misadvisors take you out of meaningful disciplines that can help you to carve out a future for yourself and your people, and put you into disciplines that are easier for you to attain your degree with a C average. So I intend to continue to be in these colleges and universities, warning our young people that the time is now, that we should not depend on white America to do for us what we must qualify ourselves to do for ourselves.
Okay. My next question, Brother Minister, deals with international affairs. You've always spoken honestly and courageously regarding the hidden realities of America's foreign policies. You've discussed the unintended consequences of the so-called Arab Spring, the continued efforts aimed at regime change in Syria, and as for Iran, the saber-rattling and continued drumbeats for war. How are we to view these global realities, these global events, and what is the responsibility of the American people to speak out against these things that are done by the government in their name?
The American people need to be awakened. If the American people really understood how evil their government and its policies have been toward people not only outside of America, but inside America, they would awaken. And out of them would come a patriot who will speak truth to power, to free their minds from the manipulation of those who are in positions of authority and power, but are corrupted to the core by the moneyed special interests that govern the governors, govern the senators, govern the government of the United States of America. But everything that is being done is moving the world toward the most dreaded of all wars, the war of Armageddon. And the wicked and the warmongers and war makers and mischief makers will be set down in a brand new world with brand new leadership that are rooted in principles of freedom, justice, equality, and peace will be the leaders of tomorrow. Let's prepare them today.
Thank you very much, Brother Shah. At this point, Brother Minister, we would like to now have Sister Starla Muhammad, our staff writer, ask you some questions.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Brother Minister, what are your thoughts on the current state of black leadership? What do black leaders, groups, and organizations need to do to eradicate the roadblocks and impediments that seem to prohibit them from working together for the benefit of the masses of our people in 2013 and beyond?
The black leadership is committed to an America that accepts us, an America that they can encourage to make a way for us, an America that would allow the income gap between black and white to close, an America that is post-racial. I don't find fault with them. These are brilliant men and women in a direction that we as Muslims, followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, believe is fruitless. They won't know that until they run into the reality that 2013, 2014, and 2015 is going to teach them. Then they will turn, as the Bible teaches. The Son of Man, went to these dry bones. He spoke the word to them, but the word only caused them to shake and rattle, but they never stood up in unity because the Spirit of God was not in them. So the Son of Man went back to his sender, disappointed that they had not come up. And the sender said to the Son of Man, prophesy unto the winds, and let these winds blow on these slain of God. The winds are blowing, and they're getting up to what one might call in a tornado or hurricane 5. And as these winds blow, the bones are forced to come together. And I believe the scriptures that we are going to stand up an exceedingly great army And then we will know that God, the Savior, is among us.
It's Sway in the morning, only on Shea 45.
10/10/15, and 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, the Day of Atonement. You know, and I remember 20 years ago I was fighting to come to D.C. and be a part of that Million Man March. I remember the 10-year anniversary as well. You know, one of the things I always admired about you, you know, even to this day, one of the things from your past that a lot of people that's attached to Minister Louis Farrakhan's legacy is your relationship, and you spoke about him earlier with Brother Malcolm. You know, and a lot of folks, I even asked folks today, what would you have me ask him if you had a chance to talk? And the majority of people ask about your relationship with the Brother Malcolm. And what's happened since. People don't really know what happened since his death and your relationship with his family. They didn't see the Mike Wallace interview. You know, they didn't know about you meeting with Betty Shabazz. Can you clarify what's your...
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, first, Brother Malcolm was my mentor. I've never met a more disciplined man. I was very fortunate to have him as my teacher. He was the greatest helper of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I would have given my life to protect his life because of my deep love for Elijah Muhammad and his being his top student. Unfortunately, there would come a time when he would break ranks with the nation and break ranks with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad over an aspect of Mr. Muhammad's personal life. Before that happened, if you remember when John Kennedy was murdered, I don't know whether you know this, but Elijah Muhammad instructed all his ministers not to say anything about the assassination of President Kennedy. Brother Malcolm was speaking at the Manhattan Center, and he got through the lecture perfectly, but he had a question and answer period, and a man from the New York Times asked him a question concerning President Kennedy. And he made a statement that was true. It was a case of the chickens coming home to roost. However, he disobeyed the direction of the teacher. The next day, the newspapers said, Malcolm rejoices, in words, over the assassination of Kennedy. Now, we have many believers in prisons all over America under white Catholic gods. Persecution began because they loved Kennedy. Malcolm was exposing Kennedy, not telling lies, telling truth. But that violation of the instructions of his teacher caused the teacher to silence him. During that period of silence, I was invited to New York to speak on a particular Sunday as other ministers were coming in. And Malcolm came and met me and took me to his home on 2311 97th Street. And during the dinner, Betty brought the dinner in, Malcolm began to tell me about my teacher's personal life. And after he finished, he said, now, brother, I could get these sisters on the telephone and trick them and make them tell you that what I'm telling you is true. I said, no, brother, you don't have to do that. When he took me back to the airport, he said to me, brother, now I don't want you to tell anybody what I've told you. I said, no, I'm not going to tell anybody but the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I saw his shoulder jump. I went back to Boston. I couldn't sleep. Because sometimes when you learn information that you didn't know, that has a tendency to shake your faith some, it keeps you up. I could not sleep that night, and 5 o'clock the next morning, as that's our time for prayer, Brother Malcolm called me. He said, Brother Lewis, I want you to delay the letter that you were going to write to give me a chance to write a letter to explain what I said and why. I said, brother, it's going to take me some time to get my head together to write such a letter. So if you can get your letter off in that time, fine. I do not want to be put in between two powerful men. He said, well, there's only one powerful man. I said, I'm aware of that, but I'm also aware that your relationship with me and mine with you and him would be troubled. Malcolm wrote his letter, and mine came after his letter, and he was summoned to Arizona to answer his teacher. Now, that was a very difficult period in the nation's life because most of you have girlfriends that you don't legitimize them as wives. I'm not talking to you personally, but most men have women on the side, but they don't accept the responsibility of procreation. Elijah Muhammad married these women. They produced for him children. Now, what you don't know, and you're going to have to face it, women are outnumbering men today from 7 to 11 to 1. And women today lose as a commodity because there's more